being with us this evening. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator this evening, but before I do that, two housekeeping things. One, we are going to be recording this evening's program for any students who are unable to join us so that we can send it out at a later time. And two, if you have questions, and we do encourage you to please participate throughout the program, feel free to throw them in the chat and I will monitor the chat and read them out loud. And also feel free to raise your hand. We will save some time at the end of the program for any questions that may come up as well. All right, without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you tonight Jennifer Richardson, who will be moderating our program. Jennifer is a senior vice president at Patrick B. Jenkins and Associates. She has 14 years of experience working in New York City and New York State government, analyzing and advising on state and city legislative and regulatory proposals and budgetary items. Her most recent experiences include successful legislative advocacy on behalf of minority and women-owned business enterprises, criminal justice reform, the professions, and the financial sector. Jennifer previously served as the Deputy Director for Mayor Bill de Blasio's State Legislative Affairs Office. Her portfolio included education, health, social services, immigrant affairs, law department, and technology. She was also the Director of State Legislative Affairs for the New York City Department of Education, where she drafted legislation and facilitated the passage of mandatory pre-K in New York City and electronic access to individualized education programs. She is currently the president of the Capital District Black and Hispanic Bar Association and an Albany Law alum. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here tonight.
So now, without further ado, I would ask our panelists to please introduce yourselves. And I'm going to start with my top right corner, Serena White Lake, alum and adjunct instructor. Serena, can you give us a little bit about your background?
Hi, everyone. Happy hump day. I hope you were able to go outside and enjoy this mild weather. I was out walking for 40 minutes, so I feel pretty accomplished. Anyway, upon graduating from law school over a decade ago, I clerked for 2 years at the Court of Appeals. And there I met Judge Theodore Jones, who inspired me to do real estate closings. He said that the first couple times you do it, it could be very difficult, but then, you know, it could become second nature. And so that stuck in my head. And then a few years later, I started doing closings. And now I teach real estate transactions as an adjunct at Albany Law. My full-time job is as counsel at the New York State Office of Children and Family Services and the Employment Law Unit, where I handle discrimination complaints by and against employees. I defend the agency and workplace discrimination complaints. I'm also on the Racial Equity Learning Exchange for my job and the Diversity Committee, and we take that very seriously. We just had a wonderful program for all of our state employees for Black History Month today. It was great. I also serve on the Albany Board of Zoning Appeals, and I'm in Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Nice to see everyone.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And now I'm going to go to Candice Williamson. Candice, can we hear a little bit about your background?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Candice. I graduated Albany Law School in 2018. I am an Excelsior Service Fellow. So I work for New York State government with the governor's executive chamber. While I was at Albany Law School, I was a member of the Government Law Review and BALSA, a very active member, but didn't serve on the board. And now I do serve on a board with Jennifer for the Capital District Black and Hispanic Bar Association. I'm the treasurer.
Thank you, Candice. Now, did I see Al Berry on my screen? Yes. Al, can we hear a little bit about your background?
Sure. So sorry for the background and where I'm coming from. I meant to be home by 4:30. I'm out in Chicago. Something came up at work, so I'm on my way there now, but I'll be there soon. Um, I graduated Albany Law School 2003, a year ahead of Jennifer. And I went to Clifford Chance Law Firm in New York. I was there for 3 years. After I left there, I went to Manhattan DA's office for about 4.5 years. Since then, moved out to Chicago. I've worked in a couple of places since I've gotten out here: Chicago Transit Authority, the Illinois Attorney General's office, prosecuting financial crimes. And now I'm at the U.S. Attorney's office in Chicago in the violent crimes section. I was a member of BOLSA while I was there, did some mediation, and also we did the trial team stuff while I was there. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm open for any questions anybody may have.
Thank you so much. And finally, Mishka, can we please hear a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody. I apologize. I just got out of a meeting. My name is Mishka Woodley, and I'm an associate attorney at Dowling Law. And I'm also co-chair for the Albany County Bar Association's Diversity Internship Program. I graduated from Albany Law School in 2016. It feels like yesterday, but I'm realizing that it's really not. I focus primarily in healthcare and human services, not-for-profits, and areas of that nature. I worked in two primary private practice firms prior to my transition. Today is actually my first day in my new firm. And while I was in law school, I was involved in some of the affiliate group associations and participated in a lot of the internships and things there during that time. And I look forward to talking to all of you.
Thank you, Mishka. I want to note that, let me just do a call out. Wale, are you on the line? Okay, so I think Wale Salas will be joining us, and I'm sure that he will, like all of you, has been a little detained and will jump on when he can. All right. Jennifer, I turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you. So thanks everyone for attending. Let's see. First question is going to be, what advice would you give to your past self? So I was going to start with Al, but he's driving because he's been out the longest. So we're going to start with Serena. What advice would you give to your past self?
I would tell myself to write as much as possible when you're in law school, because writing is such a huge skill, and it really does set you apart. Like in my unit at my job, there's a few of us who are relied upon to do the bulk of the writing. There are a lot of successful attorneys who don't do a whole lot of writing, but if you do that, it really does set you apart. So any opportunity that you have to learn how to improve, to continue improving your writing and your research, I would say definitely do that. You know, don't be afraid to get feedback because people have different styles. When I was in law school, I interned for Judge Denny Chin when he was a district court judge in New York City, and I was able to help write a pretty big opinion, and that really helped strengthen my writing skills, which I continue to work on every single day. So realize that you're going to learn something every single day, and you know, continue to be open. I would tell myself when I was younger to just be open to as many opportunities for writing as possible, because it will absolutely benefit you.
Good answer, Serena. I agree with that. A lot of people can't write at all, even amongst the attorneys, or they're still writing with a lot of, I don't know, it's distracting. And so if you are a good writer, you're an effective communicator, it does give you an edge truly over people. And I think as you're looking to, you know, leave law school and get out there and get promoted, you do want an edge. So I agree with that point, Serena. My next question I'm going to give to Candice, because she's one of the newest people out. What is your best advice for the first day / first couple of weeks on the job? And then you've had, like, I think this is your second job, so you can even distinguish between the two. Like, is it the same for both jobs that you've had?
So I think I would advise you on your first day / week to kind of take a minute to take it all in, to observe your surroundings, observe the hierarchy, how things work in your office. You don't want to be jumping over people and asking for assignments, or, you know, just not abiding by that culture in your office. So I would say just take a minute to take it in, figure out where you fit in the hierarchy of your office, and to not put too much pressure on yourself. Having a job out of law school is not the same as having an internship, which we know to be very finite. We know when our internship is going to end. When you are employed, you're in for the long haul. So just take your time. Know that you're going to master the skills of lawyering and whatever you join that particular workplace to gain. You'll master those skills with time. So just be patient with yourself.
That's great advice, Candice, because I think you're right. You should observe. I think people just jump in, start talking, but you do have to learn the hierarchy of the office and the office norms, cultures, and practices. And each office will have a different norm. So I've had 14 jobs. Keep that in mind. Every office is different. So good point, Candice. I think my next question will be for Mishka. Okay, what are some of the things you did in law school that helped you prepare for practice?
So I think with law school, there are a couple of key things. So one is, if you can take advantage of internships as much as possible in the areas of practice that you're interested in, or in one that you're borderline about, and you just want to explore, I think the real life experience in those environments will really give you a sense of whether you like government work or, you know, private practice, or whether you really like a particular practice area or not. I think it can be somewhat deceiving what a practice area is like versus that in-person experience. If you want to be in court, there are some environments that you may not be in court within the next first few years, or whatever the case may be, and learning about just the practice itself, and then the recognition of what the timeline looks like to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. I think the other thing during law school is take advantage of all of the networking opportunities and different things on campus or elsewhere to build relationships with different attorneys who can give you insights about your academic career, your professional career, but also just general mentorship support, and that network can work with you post-graduation.
Thank you. I don't know if Al can answer a question, because I think this is a good one for him. Al, can you answer a question? If not, we're going to move on. Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Al can answer a
Gotcha.
question.
I'm in the house now. All right, gotcha.
Excellent. So, question for you is about training.
Okay.
Is there formal training for new attorneys, and what does that look like between private sector and public sector? I ask you this question because I know you left private sector, big law firm. It seems like your jobs thereafter were in the public sector.
Yeah, so in the private sector, it's more in the big law firm setting, which is where I was. Training is more structured and regimented, right? So you go in, you have training sessions. They give you some assignments, some research assignments, but you go, you sit down, and you have formal training sessions with your whole first year class. They bring somebody in from out of town, and they're being paid, so they give you all these nice amenities, and they give you, this stuff. Here's a lunch for you, and here's everything, and here's the proper things that you should do. And a lot of it doesn't really give you much. And when you go to the public sector, they kind of push you over the ledge and say, jump into the pool and figure it out by experience. So I saw a bit of a difference in that. When you're in the public sector, you have more responsibility early. There's some training, and mine was in criminal, where you had a couple of weeks where they said, okay, here's the statute book, here's the main statutes we charge, here's the the way you would do a direct examination. Let's put this together and practice at the end of the day. But in the meantime, you still had your own cases. Whereas in the law firm, it was more lean back on, how to do your research, so you can do that while we teach you how to interact with clients, and how to bring in business, and how to bill, and the kinds of things that we're doing. So it really depends on where you're going as to what kind of training you get. But for the most part, in the public sector, it's, go in there and learn by experience, learn by doing, I should say.
Al, I have a question in the chat that's directed to you. So maybe I could just add on to this right now. How did you get licensed? What was the process for getting licensed in Illinois after practicing in New York?
So I was at the Manhattan DA's office when my family said we would move out to Illinois. So I started the process a bit early. The weird thing about Illinois back then was you had to have taken the MPRE after you finished your second year of law school. And I had taken mine during my second year of law school. So I had a little battle with the state of Illinois about that. Hey, I took it maybe a couple months early, like what's the big deal here? But really it was the money. You had to pay that. You had to get I had to get judges to ascribe to my character. I had to get defense attorneys that I had worked against to talk about my character. And then you just waved in. I didn't have to take another bar or anything like that. So now I hold both licenses because I'm born and raised in New York and I'm not going to give that up. So I keep my New York license and I also have my Illinois license too.
Thank you.
My next question is going to be about mentorship, essentially around what should you do when you're unsure of where to start an assignment or you have a roadblock if you don't have a formally assigned mentor? And I think I'm going to shoot this one out to Serena. Mentorship. What do you do when you don't have a formally assigned mentor and you're having an issue with a assignment or who do you talk to?
Right. For me, when I started at my agency, I didn't have a formally assigned mentor, but in conversations, I learned that one of the deputy counsels also came from a court. So she came from the Court of Claims and we bonded over that issue. And so through our conversations, I trusted her and I would go approach her if I had questions, or I'd email her and I'd see her in the hallway. And so we bonded over a certain similarity. So maybe finding a similarity with another attorney that you work with, a more senior attorney that can help you build the relationship. And then she also gave me the advice of, like, when you're speaking or when you're emailing your colleagues, to not just say, hi, well, what is the assignment, and just getting straight to the business, but sometimes starting with, I hope you had a nice weekend, how are your children? That's always a very safe question to ask someone, and people like talking about their children and their pets and things like that. And that helps build the relationship when we can talk about things not necessarily related to work. And then when you have a work related question, it's easier to ask that question. So for me, I bonded with her. And then when I was at the Court of Appeals, I really bonded with one of the administrative staff, who was the only other Black person at the court when I was there, other than Judge Jones. And I kept getting emails that said, retirement. I was like, whatever, I don't know these people. I just got here, I don't know them, whatever. But then I finally read the email and my friend was retiring. I was like, no. And I closed the office door and I just started crying for 20 minutes. So when you really build that relationship. So she was there for me, even though she wasn't an attorney, she was still like a listening ear. So you can bond with other people, you can bond with senior attorneys and also with administrative staff.
I think Serena makes a very great point. I think as attorneys, sometimes we overlook the administrative staff in the office. And Serena's point is, one, sometimes they're the only other people of color besides yourself. But then also, I think they know everyone extremely well a lot of times. They've been there for a long time. They know where the dead bodies are. They know everything. So if you can befriend them, be kind to them, get to know them, they can help you out. They can help you navigate, people who are in bad moods or when to just hide a little bit. So I think that's a great point, Serena. Do make sure you talk to your administrative staff. You are not better than them. They should be your friends, and you should keep them close and make sure you buy them cookies, because they can be a really great people. But I'm also gonna ask that same question to Candice, because Candice, you're newer out. When you, as a newer attorney, what's this, your first, second job, when you have an issue assignment, you need a mentor, what do you do? Where do you look?
I look across and not up for direction. So I look towards people. I look to ask questions to people who are, newly appointed to their position, and if their title is kind of similar to mine, I try not to just go directly to my supervisor, whoever gave me the assignment. Again, that's about reading the room and kind of knowing how your office functions and works. But that's what I do. And I also lean on the administrative staff. I'm a very friendly person when I get to a place that I'm unfamiliar with. So it's really easy for me to latch on to support staff, and they, like Jen and Serena said, they're very supportive and they'll help you navigate the office too. Like, don't go to that person, they're a little, not the best person to go to, or, reach out to this person, they might take you under their wing. They really do know the staff. So that's been helpful.
Thank you, Candice. I think I'll set my next question to Mishka. This question is, if you don't have a recurring check-in with your supervisor, how often should you stay in touch / reach out to that supervisor if you don't have like a set time and day to talk to that individual? What would you recommend? What have you done?
So I think it depends, because we're also in the middle of COVID right now. So I feel like it might look a little bit different if you're in person than when you're in this current environment. I think first and foremost, with a lot of some of these answers, you should really talk to your peers, whether it's your other associates, any of the admin staff to get a sense of people's preferences and their work habits. So there are some people who really like to be left alone, and they'd rather if you shot them an email if you wanted to talk to them, or schedule all of your questions within a certain block of time. Whereas there are other people who are fairly fluid, and you can tell from also watching them how they tend to engage with other people. So I think it's a mixture. I think there are some attorneys who I'm very comfortable with, or typically will pop in and have conversations and engage in work questions. And there are others that maybe you'll check in with once a day via email or something of that nature. But I do think that you would, at least during COVID, check in once a day, just make sure that nobody needs anything for the most part. But I think that the most important thing is to ask. If you're not really clear, especially when you're just starting, that might be the best time to ask and just find out what people's preferences are. And you can even ask the partner that you're working with what the preference is, and then work from there.
Good answer, Mishka. I agree with that. I think, I'm in we're all kind of working virtually. So I don't check in with my supervisor, or should say my boss, ever, unless something's like a flame, I might go call them. But otherwise, I never check in. And I think some of that is just trust. I think once you get a trust and relationship with whoever your supervisor / boss is, and they know you're doing your work and you're diligent, a lot of times you can just keep moving along. And I find that I check in if I know something's about to blow up, or I'm like, I gotta get this story in before it all goes astray. Otherwise, I think you're right. You gotta learn what your supervisor wants, and sometimes the best way is to just ask them. I'm gonna ask Serena the same question, because Serena, you're in the public sector in a bigger office setting. What would you recommend to people?
Right, because when Mishka said check in once a day, I was like, "Ooh, really? Ooh, yikes!" But she's at a firm.
I think if you're brand new,
if you're brand new. And it is different because I'm in government, right? And look at Mishka, she's got the big office, okay? So I'm looking at your background, it looks beautiful. But every office is different. And look, I've been at my agency for going on 8 years, okay? So it's a little bit different for me. In my office, we went from 6 attorneys to 2, okay? And even though we're virtual, I go into the office maybe once a week, and they know I'm working because I have all these deadlines and all these submissions and things going to the EEOC, the DHR. So, and so my supervisor will assign me work and all that. And I used to respond, received, thank you, I'm on it, da-da-da. But then I just realized it's just the 2 of us, and he's so busy. And every time I send an email, it's another distraction. So I'm like, I'm not even going to respond to him, whatever. But it's about learning, the person you're working with. But I will agree with Mishka, when you're first starting out in your career, in your office, and you're learning, you want to definitely be visible. You want them to know that you're there, you're ready to work. And I would say check in maybe every couple days. I know if I have an assignment, for example, I have something due on Monday, my supervisor is going to review it before I submit it. And I told him, I'll have it ready by close of business tomorrow. And he's like, oh, thank you so much. Just to give him a heads up as to how far things are coming along. So I would say when you first start, you definitely want to check in like at least once every 3 days. That's what I would say.
And
Thank
actually,
you.
I was going to say very quickly, just to follow up on that, when you're in person, that can look, as we were just saying, totally different because people see you walk in the office, you're present, they know you're there. And so the conversation changes when you're not remote versus people knowing you're at home and wondering sometimes, whether you're there or not.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask another question. This wasn't from the list. I just came up with it. Like I know Al, you did law review, and I'm not sure about everyone else. I just know Al because I was in law school at the same time. Do you believe that things like law review, journal, let's say even like moot court, how those things impact you in the workplace? Would you have done more? Would you have done less? What advice would you give to young attorneys?
Take it with law review. So I came into law school, first generation lawyer, and I don't think I took, the mentorship stuff real seriously. I was happy to be there. I got offered law review and I kind of didn't really see the point of it when I first got offered law review. I got on there, at one point initially, I was like, this is more of a headache than fun. But it works out in the long run. What law review teaches you, it teaches you the writing. That's what our profession is. It's writing, right? And, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, when people look at resumes and they look at these things, they look to see what you did when you were in law school, right? So what activities were you involved with? How'd you get yourself going rather than just, going to class, going home and studying, right? Because if that's all you do, then you should have high grades, right? So, okay. You got law review. I did a friend of mine roped me into the negotiation competition, right? But I did it. It was fun. It was exciting. And now I see the value of it. I mean, I'm a prosecutor, right? But I see the value of it. And I think, some of that goes into further questions along when you kind of negotiate salary, right? Make somebody talk first so that you can counter rather than you talking first and having them counter you, right? I did moot court, moot trial, the trial team, and that was fun. I got to measure my skills, I think, against other attorneys in other schools. And I think the joy of doing the inter-school competitions is you can then get to see what other people are like outside of Albany Law School. You kind of fall into a position where you compare yourself to others in your class. When you get out of law school, now you're in there with people from other law schools. And then you realize we're all learning the same thing. And there's really nothing that puts me at a disadvantage or advantage over anybody else except for me and my work habits and my work study, right? So I think all of that stuff, it made me feel good coming out because I said, okay, I have this stuff behind me. And I went to a law firm, one of those top, bigger law firms. And then when I got there, I was like, oh, we're all the same, right? Like, okay, sure. What'd you learn first year in torts? It's the same cases I learned the first year in torts. And I was like, oh, but you went to Harvard. I went to Albany Law School. My loans are less, you got more, right? So and to move back to what Jennifer was saying, the activities are helpful. And even if you don't see it now, even when, man, I feel old. I graduated law school in 2003, right? And when I wanted to come to the Department of Justice in 2006, when I submitted my application, it was, oh, you were on law review. I mean, sorry, not 2006, 2016. Oh, you were on law review. I'm like, well, that's 13 years ago, right? But they're still looking at that. Oh, you were in a negotiation competition. Tell me about that from 13 years ago. So if you have the opportunity to do stuff there, do it. Even if right now you're like, I don't know, I don't really see the joy of this. Do it, because later on it'll come into play and help you out.
Great.
Hey, Jennifer, can I say one thing on that too?
Yes.
Quickly. So I know people who know me well know that I'm not a big check the box kind of person. And I don't believe in always doing things to check the box just to say you did it. However, he's absolutely right in terms of there are so many things that carry over where there's an expectation that if you did not do something, you're just not considered at all. And so as you do kind of talk to people and pursue certain opportunities, you really want to be mindful of what you choose to do or not do, because sometimes you'll have a really great opportunity in the future and you'll realize that the only reason why you're not being considered is because there is that box that you didn't check when you were in law school or something of that nature. So it's not that you do it just because of that, but just also recognize the decision you're making when you do choose to not do certain things that maybe you're advised to do otherwise.
And to piggyback on what Mishka is saying, I know that when I was clerking, I was told by supervisors in terms of when they're reviewing applications, in order to be considered for clerkship, you needed to either be on a journal or have done moot court. Otherwise, they would not consider you, is what I was told. So luckily, I was on a journal. I tried out for moot court and I didn't make it. Their loss. But and Albert is absolutely right. Like when I was on the journal, I thought it was going to be fun. I don't know. I thought it was going to be great because it was a whole writing competition to get on it. And then they're like, well, here's these 100 citations and get it to us by next Wednesday. And I'm like, this is not fun. But I checked that box, like Mishka said, and I also enjoyed like the competition. I was on International Law Journal, and there was like, I guess in Europe, they call it competition and something like that in terms of, like, this is going back a few years, I can't remember. What do you call it when you can't non-compete clauses or something? I can't remember. But anyway, we used to have big seminars and I was able to help with that. So that was a good part of the experience. But anyway, you do get good experience from being on mediation, negotiation, trial, advocacy. I know we have some negotiation champions in this room. I see you. And I think that they are really good skills to have. And then you also really learn time management. I think law students, when you're in law school, you really are an expert of time management, because just think about everything that you're doing right now in terms of your classes, your writing, your internships, everything that you're doing. And then bar prep, it's like you're a wizard of time management. If you keep up that work ethic and that time management, you will absolutely have a successful career.
Thanks, everyone. My next question is, I'm going to skip this one that Al brought up, and that's salary negotiation. That's a question on here. And what tips do you guys have for negotiating your first salary out of law school? Al, you brought it up, so I'm going to start with you.
So I was just telling my wife this, we were talking about this question. I was like, I haven't had to negotiate salary because it was like set for everywhere I went, right? But one thing, and that's why I brought up the negotiating part, we were talking about knowing your worth and understanding what you're worth. But the reason why I said in negotiations, one thing I learned is you don't put that first number out, is because what you'll see is, one time I negotiated my salary, what you'll see is if you throw out a number and it's accepted like that, you were too low and there's no way to change that, right? That's it, that's what your salary is. If you throw out that number and it's too high and the face turns a little bit, you were too high. So you want to have a conversation with the person in front of you, what it is that they're seeking, what it is that you're bringing to the table, and what it is that you think that they're going to give you. And as you're having that back and forth, you want them to put out that first number. And this is just, like I said, I haven't had a bunch of salary negotiations, but you want them to put out that first number. And when that first number comes to you, then you can work on it. You can work on it up, you can work on it down. You can tell them why you feel you need more than what that number is, or maybe the number is good for you. But if you put out that number first, you've put yourself in a box where they're either going to accept it right away, or they're going to move, or they're gonna kind of look at it like maybe you're too high. So my advice would be try to have a conversation when you're talking about this stuff and see if your employer will give you a number first of what they're thinking. You got to do your research. You got to go across the board and see what kind of attorney you are, how many years out you are, big law firm, mid-sized law firm, small law firm, what that median is. And then you got to have a number in your head. This is what I think I'm worth. This is where I think I need to go. But don't put it out first. And that would kind of be my advice on that.
Thanks. I want to get someone else. Anyone else have any tips for salary negotiation? I
was going to say one of my friends, she did negotiate for a higher salary in the public sector, and they went back and forth, and she did get the higher salary. But realize that if you do negotiate for a higher salary, that they're going to expect you to do the work that I guess makes it plain to them that you deserve that higher salary. So what happened with this particular person was she negotiated for a higher salary, and then later on she was terminated because they didn't believe that she was worth the extra money that she asked for. So I just put that out as like a caution, because sometimes they do kind of put you under the microscope, like, oh, you're saying you're worth this much more, so prove it to us. And I'm sure all of you, you're extremely hardworking and all of that and won't have that problem, but sometimes you just have to be wary about what demanding a higher salary can lead to. For me, I never really had to negotiate my salary, only because I came in through the government, and when I was clerking, it was a set salary. It was a nice salary at the Court of Appeal, so put that out there if anybody's interested in working there. And it did increase, with the state. There were definitely quality yearly increases, cost of living increases. So it's my 2 cents.
I would say I've negotiated salaries several times, and the first time I did it, I kind of just went blind based off what I believed I should get. And it worked out perfect. What I didn't realize is that I set off a chain storm that I had no idea, because I was the youngest person hired in a long time. And so the guy above me, I made more than him, and he figured it out, and he was not happy. Well, not my problem, boss's problem on that one. So I would just say and I think I did it based on I did my own research. I looked around, decided that I wanted this amount. I was going to work here. I felt like I was valuable, and it was a while ago, and I got what I wanted. I was surprised. I'm like, great for me. And I feel like we're attorneys, right? If you're going to fight for other people and advocate, you advocate for yourself. Number one, I think. And then I'd also say at another job I had the non-public sector, I actually asked people, you should have really good friends within your arena who you can ask and talk about salaries. I'm not saying every day, but you have a sense of what people make, that what you should be making. Like, if I know X makes this amount, I should make this amount, and this is why. And I think that a lot of people are so quiet, you never know, but sometimes that's to your detriment. I have really good friends in the arenas I work, so I know what people make. And I can go in from a knowledge basis of where the standpoints are, and advocate that way. And that's what I'd recommend too. So if you are kind of on the low on the totem pole with your friends, ask them. You don't have to ask people several steps ahead of you, but at least have a sense. That's what I'd recommend for salary negotiation. My next
Jen,
question.
I have something to add. So I also didn't have to deal with salary negotiations because I'm in the state, and I'm in a very unique situation because I went into the state as a fellow. So you are not paid the regular salary as every other attorney in state government. So when it came time for me to apply outside of the fellowship arena, I did have to look to, I think several people on this line kind of helped me. Jennifer was one of them. And you hear Jennifer, she's very bold. She's like, I know what I want. I'm going to get this. I was not like that. So I needed to ask around and kind of figure out, it sounds weird, but I had to use people around me to help me come up with what my worth was and what I should be asking for and what the offer should be. So I'm going to carry that over when I do leave state service, but yes, ask your peers and people above you.
Yeah, and I was glad Candice came to me, because I'm the first one to say, I think you're worth this. Go in and ask. All people can tell you is no. Who cares? It's a no. It's not like, they're crushing your heart. It's a no. Counter and keep going. And not only that, I think you should negotiate for all kinds of stuff. Parking, I negotiate for all kinds. Everything I want. A window, random stuff. If this is what I need to make myself happy, I'm going to go and I'm going to ask for it. And I think you lose out and you don't ever ask. It's one thing if you're in the public sector, maybe you can't get a window. It's just, that's what the office looks like. But if you're in the private sector, get a window. Make sure they have your favorite snacks. Go for it.
I think I get prosecuted if I ask for snacks and stuff, and from the I don't think I could do that.
My last shop and my favorite snacks, popcorn and almonds, and I asked for it. It's just why not? If you have to be somewhere for a long time, be happy there.
Actually, and can I add one last thing? I was just going to say benefits, Jennifer, because I agree with you. That was going to be my thing. Don't forget benefits. Some of these places will offer you money, and then you look at their benefits, and you need retirement. You need good medical. insurance, like all of these things, and they'll like slip some not so great thing under the rug, and you think that you're getting, you know, a lot of money, but then you're paying a lot in benefits or something, or you don't have great retirement, they don't match. So it's not that you can't compromise on those things, but pay attention to them because they matter for you. That's money on the table.
Exactly. So I think my next question is, how important is it to get involved in out of office activities, especially when you're new hire? So like happy hours, lunches, etc. How important is it to get involved in out of office activities? I'm going to start with Serena because I know the public sector seems to always have a happy hour / something that's out of office. So I'll start with
definitely when I was at the Court of Appeals. At my current agency, you know, not, you know, I guess they have like big cultural days and programs, et cetera, but not so, you know, not so much of the fun stuff. I remember when I first started working there right after law school, I did enjoy, we sit outside and eat, you know, lunch together, and I'd always make sure I did that. And they took us to the baseball game, the Troy Valley Cats, I guess. And, you know, it was nice. And they definitely wanted full participation from all of the new clerks, and they paired us with the more senior clerks. And then they used to have clerks coffee, and you got a chance to speak to the judges, and it was nice. And it was very highly recommended that you go so that you can put a name with your face, because sometimes that's the only opportunity to do that. With happy hour, I was definitely like careful about happy hour. You don't want to get too happy during happy hour. I would definitely limit it to if you drink, because a lot of people don't, and cheers to you who don't. But if you do imbibe, it's good to like limit yourself to one drink. Because, you know, some people get a little bit too happy, and you do not want to be that person. I would say not so much up here in Albany, because by the time I started my career, you know, I was more mature. But when I was in law school, because I went to law school in New York City, I don't know if that's clear from my intro. I came to Albany after I graduated in 2010, and you know, in the summers we would have all kinds of like private rooftop happy hours and stuff. And again, I often saw examples of why you should be very careful about doing. Stay for an hour and then leave. That's what I say. Stay for 60 minutes, make the rounds. Hi, how you doing? Happy to be here. To new attorney, etc. And then leave. Opt for the coffee, all right? And I will say, I'm also I'm an active member of the Albany County Bar Association with Mishka on the diversity internship program. And I like the coffees in the morning, because in the morning, very few people or less people attend. So you have more of an opportunity to speak directly to more of like the senior staff or whoever you're trying to build a relationship with, because it's less noisy, there's no alcohol, and it's less attended. So you get their attention and you get to be in all the pictures. But so I say participate, but don't get too happy during happy hour.
Can I answer some of that too? I'm gonna back mostly what Serena's saying. And I told Mary I was gonna say this, and I didn't say this in the beginning. I work for the federal government, but these opinions are all mine. They are not the opinions of the federal government. Understand that when I talk to you, but I'm gonna tell you what I believe, right? I'm not gonna lie to you. What Serena's telling is absolutely true, right? There's the way life should be, and there's the way it is, right? You absolutely have to go out and socialize, right? I went to a law firm named Clifford Chance, right? And it's an international law firm. And in my first year class, there were 3 of us that were Black, right? And there was 36 of us that were in the class, right? So when people went out to these things, they got into partners' faces, right? You talk to them, and I sip alcohol, right? I don't drink alcohol. I don't like white wine. I didn't like red wine until that point, because I had to learn to like a little bit of red wine, right? I drink a lot of Coca-Cola, but you have to get out there, because what winds up happening is there were 36 of us, and the assignment should be individualized, right? But I was interested in white collar crime, which was hard to break into. So you have to talk to the white collar crime partners, because what they'll tell you is they'll talk to you, they'll laugh with you, and they'll say, oh, when something comes in, I'll remember you. So when something came in, instead of going through the assignment system, they'd say, oh, Al told me he was interested in white collar crime when we went to that Yankee game. Okay. And then next thing you know, here's a call and you can come and you can step in. And when it comes to government, it's the federal government, and you think that a crime comes in and it's just here, you're going to do it. But what winds up happening is when you're dealing with agents and you become friendly with agents, when they get something that they think is good, because you've spoken to them before and you know them, they come to you. And it's just natural. People flow and flock to individuals that they like. So my advice would be, you don't have to go overboard. If that's not your personality, you don't need to be that way. But you go for a little bit. Talk to a couple of people and then take off, right? When I was at the Manhattan DA's office, I had newborn kids. So I'd go a little bit and I'd say, all right, you know what? I got to take off. Oh, where you going? I got to, my daughter, I got to go, watch my daughter so my wife can go do something. Nobody's going to beat you for that. But you go there, you make your face and you make yourself known. And I absolutely agree. Just when you go to drink, just don't know your limit. Otherwise, you'll be the person that they talk about all the time and you don't want to be that story.
I have one other thing to add on that too. Related to just the concept of the things people talk about in those environments are both professional and personal. And so as people were talking about getting to know the people in your office, the places that I've really gotten to know different people in certain offices are the holiday parties, the bar, like those environments, because who they talk about, what they talk about, the gossip, the whatever it is, you can also get a sense of who you can trust and who you can't trust, who you can bond with and things of that nature. Sometimes in those more casual environments where everything's not as stuffy and it's not as professional.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points. I myself personally, I love to run. Not everyone loves to run, but I do. So I'm like the office queen of the corporate challenge. I will organize it, buy the shirts, and get the whole team to sign up. I love it. Now they think they don't like it, but they love it. And that's a great way to bond. And people remember you. And I remember one firm just wanted to hire me because they were so happy to have a diverse corporate challenge team. Really? A diverse corporate challenge team? That's what made them excited because no one else, no other females wanted to run but me. They're like, you want to run? Yes. Yeah, I can't wait. When is it? So pick something you like too. So if you like something, it's even more fun to bond with people because gives you a complete connection with them that you never had before. Because the people I was running with, some people I would never talk to in my life, but we can at least talk about running and our times and why we enjoy it. So it gives you another conversation starter, kind of like what everyone else said. My next question is going to be on diversity and inclusion. And in your office settings and workplaces, how has diversity and inclusion impacted you? I'm going to start with Al because he was at a law firm and we read so many great stories about how diverse and so much inclusion that they have. So Al, let's get your opinion first.
What do you mean? Every place I've been, it's been a whole bunch of us just sitting around a table, and it's so great. It's different. You go there, you're the only Black face a lot of the times. Even now, you think in the federal government, you guys are in New York, but Chicago has a carjacking problem, right? So recently we, created this task force, and it's the carjacking task force. And my office was, I guess, nice enough to say, hey, Al, we want you to be the representative for the Northern District of Illinois. And I went into a room with assistants in charge of different federal agencies and Chicago Police Department and everything. And I was the only Black face there, right? And that's just something I got used to, right? But diversity to me is a lot of different things, right? There's diversity in your gender, it's diversity in your sexual orientation, it's diversity in your background. My background is I grew up in the projects. So I know that I won't find many people that have that background, and I'm just comfortable in my skin, right? So for me, I had to find a way to get comfortable around these things. And I started at the law firm where, there were 3 of us in my first year class, and then the other 2 left me there by myself. So, it's just something that's just there. It's tough. But people, I think there's a lot of partners and senior lawyers that see that and understand the difficulties of it. I think I was lucky enough to come out of law school in a time that's not like the good old days. And it's not necessarily as diverse as it is now, but I was kind of in the middle where people understood the struggle. that I had as an African-American male coming up in society and just as being a lawyer. Sometimes it's a little over the top where they're offering words of kindness. So that can be problematic, but you learn to live with it. My wife is in a position too where she's the only Black face, so we talk about it a lot. And sometimes when you get into these situations, you just need somebody to lean on and somebody that you can talk to about it to keep you sane and keep you level. And that's how I get through all of it. It doesn't, if somebody's racist in these recent days, they haven't done it to my face. So that's I guess the best part that I can say about that. But when you get out there, it's gonna be places where you're the only minority in the group. You're the only person that has a different kind of, it's not a white male. I just put it point blank. But you learn to go with it because you have to. I don't know if that really answers much of the question. I'm just trying to be as honest as I can about it, not sugarcoat it in any kind of way. But it hasn't been bad. I mean, the law firm, you have some little racist things that happen there. But I got out of there and I didn't want to stay. So I left and I went somewhere else. So you learn what you can live with, you learn what you can't, and you do what's best for yourself. But it's gonna be tough to see other people or a majority of minorities, which is why we're minorities, but a majority of people that look like you in the room.
Anyone else want to add anything to that question?
I can add something a little bit about just like figuring out your own personal and professional balance. I know, different students, some of them have concerns about, what can I tolerate and sleep at night, which is often a question that can be asked, especially over the past year. But then also, what do I do when I think that my professional career might be compromised because I'm not getting the opportunities that I need in order to grow? And so I think it's multifaceted. I think it's, the culture might not be great, but at the same time, maybe you're getting the opportunities that you need in order to transition eventually and getting the work or the experience that you need. And sometimes you're the work and experience, the culture is great, but you're not getting the work and experience. And we know that both of those things are related to that diversity and inclusion issue. And so really pay attention to both, I want to say. Really understand them both. And so even when one isn't great, look at the other and try to navigate through those until, and then figure out when the best transition time is, but try to take advantage of either one. And if neither is there, that's tough too. But I would say also find mentors and support systems, whether within or outside of your firm, to try to help you navigate through that. Because I think the greatest challenge a law firms have is just the authenticity of relationships and like their diversity initiatives. So you're just going to have to work through some of those as they try to figure those things out.
I would say in terms of like obstacles, I haven't really had a lot of obstacles with diversity and inclusion because I was working at the Court of Appeals and there was a focus on fairness and injustice. And then at my agency, it's very progressive and we have a whole racial equity learning exchange, et cetera. But recently I was defending the agency against a private attorney who has a partner, who has a big reputation. And I was at the office and it was a fancy office. And this is like about 2 months ago. And I'm there dressed in full suit. I'm tall and, I'm extremely professional. And 2 times while I was waiting to be let into the room for the deposition, one white male attorney came out and said, "Who's your attorney?" And I said, "I'm the attorney. I represent New York State," right? And then a white female attorney comes out and she goes, "Are you a witness?" You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what? It had not happened to me at all in my career, not out loud anyway. And twice, and I'm telling you, I was wearing a full suit. Okay, I had the binders. Like attorneys, we have those accordion binders, and they asked me, "Am I the witness?" That threw me off. So each time one of them came in, I said, "I am the attorney. I'm here for the deposition." And I said it loud. And so I feel like you just have to let your presentation and your skills speak for themselves. Because when we went into the room and they watched how, I comported myself during the deposition, how professional I was, I don't think that they'll make that mistake again in terms of just assuming that if you see a Black person in the lobby of a fancy law firm, that I absolutely have to be the witness or, you know, the plaintiff or whatever, you know? So that just kind of threw me off guard. And I was gonna write a post on Facebook, but I was like, no, I'm not gonna do it. But anyway, so that might happen in your career, but just, you know, say it loud and proud. I'm the attorney. I'm here for the deposition. This is, my client is New York State. My client is whomever it is. And then let your actions, you know, show and prove, you know, your skill and represent.
I think that's a really good point, Serena. I think in terms of diversity, I think even for myself, I think I deal more diversity sometimes of thought. I do a lot of criminal justice work. I'm a lobbyist at I was at a firm where I was the only African American, and I found sometimes that my firm and myself, sometimes we thought differently, and it was sometimes even my boss. And I remember one time I was having a conversation, and he said something. I was like, I think something totally different. I'm like, should I say something? I'm like, yeah, I am. When they hired me, they read my resume. You saw where I came from. You should have known my thoughts. Here I come. So sometimes you have to think to yourself, is this the moment to say what you want to say, or should you keep it inside? And I was like, no, this is the point that needs to be made. This is what I represent. This is why I'm here. This is my client's issue. And I'm going to say it. But you have to decide for yourself if it's worth that moment. And I think it can be tough sometimes when you're weighing that. But I feel like personally, like, I don't want to work for anyone who's closed-minded in the first place. And if what I have to say, because it's not going to be unprofessional, something that you don't like, I'm an attorney. We're going to discuss as attorneys. You might have a different viewpoint, and I understand that. But if it's that serious, then that's probably not the place for me anyway. So just to put that out there.
Oh, and actually,
question, we're coming to a close soon, is going to be on imposter syndrome. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome, and how did you deal with it? I'll start with you, Serena, because I think this is a question that you might want to take first.
Honestly, not really. I don't know if that sounds weird. Not really. I've been extremely nervous. Like when I just began, you know, teaching for the first time as an adjunct professor last year for Albany Law, I was extremely nervous. Maybe the first couple of days I probably felt that way, but then I just dove into the text and material and just covered myself in that. And then the students are amazing, especially this year. I have a couple of them here. So yeah, I don't think I'm the best person to answer this question. I'm sorry.
Candice, do you have any thoughts on this question?
I have a lot, yes. So I would say when you do feel this way, like you don't belong, or I don't know, you're trying to figure out why you are where you are, and just trying to figure out where you fit in. It's important to acknowledge them and not necessarily run from those thoughts that you were having. Understand why it's holding you back from doing your job, or you know, where it originates from, and then also to reach out to your friends or family who can kind of help bring you back and recenter you. So what was the question that we were answering before this? There was something.
Diversity inclusion.
Okay, yes. So I have always been the only person of color attorney in the offices that I've worked in. And sometimes you sit around in like the meetings and stuff, you know, look around, and just by seeing that you're the only person of color there, you can think, why am I here? I don't belong here. And it's just important to have bar associations help me a lot. The Black and Hispanic Puerto Rican Bar Association. It's good to have others in the field who can kind of reel you back in, even though they might be feeling some of the same things you're feeling. Sometimes it's easier to give advice instead of taking your own advice, and you just kind of lean on others around you and take stock in why you're there and know your worth. It all ties in.
Oh, Al.
I like to say you should talk to people that are kind of on the same level as you. And when you talk to those people, you'll realize they know as much as you do or less than you do. right? There's a thought process that, you know, the higher you go up, the more these people know what they're doing. The dirty secret is a lot of them don't know what they're doing, right? You get up there and you start talking to them and you're like, you don't know what's going on, right? I was at trial recently, and you know, these attorneys, they're you know, the way they write is so great, and then you stand up there at trial and you're running over top of them because they don't really know what they're doing, right? Trial, it doesn't sound right. Objection, what's your basis? And I hate to say it, but sometimes when people do that, that makes you feel better, right? I see, it's not really that, right? So if you put in the work behind it, you know what's coming. I'm a trial attorney. I know what's going to come at the end of that is a trial, and I'm trying to take away someone's liberty, and I have a defense attorney that's fighting for someone's liberty. Where's the pressure, right? The pressure's on that person. So I can ease up a little bit on my pressure point, one. And two, you'll always ask yourself the questions you don't know the answer to. So when you're in your own head and you're talking to yourself, no one ever says, man, what is 2 + 2? I just don't know the answer to that, right? You're gonna ask yourself, what happens if this, you know, witness goes south and says this or that? I don't know what I'm gonna do. And the reason you're asking yourself that question is because you don't know what to do. So understand the way the mind works is the mind is trying to find ways out of things, and it's gonna find what you don't know the answer to. So just do the things you know the answer to, do what you know best. And I think you can overcome the thought of the imposter syndrome, right? People, you're all at I don't care what school you go to. You know, when I went to the law firm, I started out that way, right? I'm at this law firm with Harvard, Yale, Stanford. Man, they must know more. And then, like I said, you talk to them and you're like, oh, you really don't know that much more, right? You start doing the research and you're like, and they're asking you questions, right? And you're like, oh, you don't, you know, the Manhattan DA's office, you don't know what a predicate felon is? No, tell me. And then you're telling them stuff and you're like, oh, now I understand how this works. So just, if you start to talk to people, you understand that what you're thinking in your head isn't so crazy. They're thinking the same thing. They're not better than you. They don't know more than you. I think it was Professor Siegel that did a criminal New York Crim procedure. I always take what he said, and I'm sorry, I'm old, so he's slipping me a little bit. But him and Professor Preiser, who did criminal procedure law, they both told me the same thing, which was, I became an expert in this. You know how I became an expert? Because I read the book twice. I carry that with me everywhere I go. You read it twice, next thing you know more than half, 75% of the people, because they didn't read it at all, they read half of it, or they read it once. So if you feel that you're going into a situation and you're not as good as somebody else, make yourself as good as they are. Read it again. Just prepare yourself for it, and you're never going to know all the answers. And that's just the way it is. It's just life. You're just not going to know all of it. And when you don't, like for me, a judge is there. No judge. Can I have some time to think about it? Or don't be afraid of silence. I'll keep quiet. You think I'm thinking. Can I come back to you on that answer? Don't just make it up. Just think about it, and everybody will understand. I think you'll be all right. Sorry for being so preachy.
No, that was a great answer. I think that's a great answer. You're right. I mean, a lot of people don't do any research at all, and they're asking you basic questions. You think they know what they're doing? They have no clue. And just the fact that you did some research and you know where it is and you have some history on something, you can truly beat them on that alone. I love that answer, Al. Well, I think those are all the questions I had. I think
you just said that one thing you learned, that you sit there, somebody will write a brief and you'll read the case and you'll be like, that's not what the case says. Where'd they get that from? You just read it and you'll just be amazed at how much further ahead you are to read it. Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, no. Great. No, you're right. I like I said, I agree. People do not do a lot of background or research. And I think that's what gives us an edge as attorneys, because I think we're automatically, innately in tune to research. And I think that's really good. I think those are all my questions. I don't know if Mary has any from the general chat, but.
Yep. So there's one question in the chat right now, and it is, for all of the panelists, did you feel ready for your first job after completing law school?
For me, I did because I was with the group. So because I was clerking and there were 6 of us in the group, I wasn't, in there by myself. So, and then we worked closely with certain of our supervisors. And then also because, I knew it was reading and writing and, and that's what we do and all of that. I did feel prepared. And also my supervisor, she was just amazing. During my interview with her, I had a very good interview with her. And during the interview, she said, "Oh, she said, I'm like a mother. I'm going to be like your mom." And so that made me feel like I could go to her if I needed advice. And I knew that I had just done all this writing competition and all of this work. I know that I think Albert mentioned clinics like mediation, negotiation. I did the securities arbitration clinic. I did a lot of different experiences in law school. And I think Mishka mentioned earlier that every single experience you have in law school, all of your internships, your externships, clinics, competitions, you pull from that experience. You really do pull from that experience. And you might be surprised that you're using something from one of your competitions in your work early on. So I did feel confident. And quick funny story, my mom, she called me on the first day. She's like, "Oh, how did it go?" I said, I went great. She goes, "Are you the only Black person? You know how parents are." She wanted to know that. And then I'm in the office with my supervisor. I'm like, yes, I'll talk to you later. But anyway, long-winded answer is I did feel prepared.
I'll go. My answer is opposite. No, I did not feel prepared. They didn't teach you where to file the stuff in law school. They didn't teach you where the courtroom is in the building. When I was at the law firm, I didn't feel prepared. When I got to Manhattan DA's office, I didn't, not the first day, because I just didn't know where anything was. I didn't know what I was gonna do, what the assignment was gonna be. You hear all this stuff in criminal law, you file the complaint, then there's an arraignment, then there's this, well, where? Where's the person coming from? And you get to the federal government, they're like, you make sure that the defendant's there. How, right? I don't know how to do any of this stuff, but you learn it. And you have to understand that you gotta be willing to make a mistake here and there. The people that succeed understand that they may make a mistake one way or another. They're minimal mistakes and you know how to correct it, right? So my first days, and this goes back to what Jennifer and everybody was talking about earlier, when you learn the staff, right? And the paralegals and you're friends with the legal secretaries, right? I follow them around the first day because they know where everything is. They know how to get everything. They know where to file everything. They know which partner to talk to, which partner not to talk to. They know which one's in a good mood and when he's not in a good mood. They know you can knock on this door. This one leaves to go to lunch here and goes there. So that's what I did. That's how I kind of got myself ready. And that took a little bit. It took about a week or so, and I started to feel comfortable. But initially, I didn't because it was the unknown. But as long as you have the steel for it, you'll get comfortable after about a couple of days to a week. I think that's the way I felt about it.
So if I can add to that, I'll speak on behalf of a student who I connected with a couple of days ago, who is in big law down in New York City. And the feedback that I was told was I thought that a month was hard for the kind of projects I was doing in law school. And then I get an email at night at 8 o'clock and have it be asked for in the morning. And so the timelines are really different, which they felt like the preparation wasn't quite the same for. But then also things like technology and learning all the systems and the drafts and the editing. And I have to do this Excel spreadsheet. I never had to use Excel before in my life. And it's just assumed that I know all of these different operational systems and programs. And so I think also just from, as he was saying, from a different side of the practical aspects of it, being a lawyer, there are just all these eclectic things that you do, programs you use, things you're going to have to learn that takes time. And just, I think when that's all presented to you at once in the very beginning on the first day or within the first month or so, it can be overwhelming a little bit because some of those things were never really on your radar, but they're just instrumental and critical. You need to learn those systems and those technologies and things in order to do your job and do it well beyond the law. So it's the non-legal things sometimes that you don't really realize or think about.
Yeah, I didn't feel prepared either for my first job. And now that I'm being hired as like a full-time employee and not a fellow, I still don't feel prepared. And I've been here for a year. So I don't know when it's going to change for me, but I do know that the biggest thing for me is being fearful of coming off as like not being prepared or not knowing how to answer a question, not knowing where to look. Those are the things that kind of give me anxiety. But I often have to remind myself that the people who I am working with have been in this profession for a very long time. A lot of them still have questions, as was said previously, and it's okay to make mistakes, know how to fix those mistakes or come with a solution. But those are some of the things that I had to or constantly have to remind myself of, even now. So I did not feel prepared though.
I actually felt prepared. I'm going to disagree. I did. I started, my first job was at a clerkship, and I felt like I knew so much more than I thought I knew. I didn't realize when I got in with all these other people how much I knew. I thought, because I hated law school. I hated every day of it. I was like, this is terrible. Law school should just die. But I love practice. And like I said, my first day I was there, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm smarter than I thought I was. I am really smart. I mean, they didn't teach you like some like, this is where the books are, but it was like, they taught me enough to like have like really good conversations with people early on and just like crush them. I didn't think I was, I didn't think I'd be able to do that, but I felt prepared. And I think kind of what Mishka said in terms of learning about the other systems, always be open to asking people. I do legislative history. One of my friends had to do something on, I guess in her brief, something about legislative history. She had no clue. She called me up. No one ever calls me because no one cares. And she's like, Jen, I need to figure out the chapter amendment from, 1998 to blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, let's go. And I was so excited and we figured it out together. But I would have called her. She does matrimonial law. If I had an issue, I would have definitely called her. So look to your peers, because a lot of times you keep people around to do different things. You never know when they'll come in handy to be able to help you.
Great. I see that we have one more question in the chat and we are way over time. So unless anyone is opposed, I'm going to put this out as the last question for the evening. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. So the question is, it is not a small question. It is, how have you dealt with uncomfortable conversations in situations where someone either made you uncomfortable or offended you? Address those conversations.
Well, I'll say I was recently on a conference call and I felt emboldened to speak up because I've been participating in so many webinars, especially in the last few months. With everything going on in America and the killing of George Floyd and the country really coming to a reckoning. And there's been so many different like diversity, equity, inclusion panels and speaking up panels. So I had just participated in one and gotten a lot of good lessons. And then I was on a call. I think there were about 8 people on the call. It was myself and another person of color. I think she's a Latina. And Caucasian woman said something like disrespectful, and I was gonna let it go, kind of like Jen mentioned earlier in terms of you ask yourself, should I say something? But because I was just on the panel and the topic had come up, I said I have to say something. And so I said I didn't appreciate the comment that was made. The other person of color agreed with me. And then we had another Caucasian woman who was in a leadership position, and she also agreed with what I was saying, but then someone else disagreed. And so I had to reemphasize my point. So it wasn't enough for me to just say it once. I had to say it again because it was getting away. And I just felt emboldened and I felt courageous because of these types of conversations. And I felt that it was serious enough that I needed to say something. And it was addressed and the person apologized. And then later on, one of my supervisors, who is a Caucasian woman, said, you know, it took a lot of guts for you to speak up in the call because there were 8 people, some very senior people. And I'm glad that you spoke up because it was an important issue that needed to be addressed. So it's just figuring out whether or not you think it's worth it to raise the issue, and then raise it confidently. You know, take your time. You know, if you need to speak slowly, and then just be bold. Like, boldness is important. I had a mentor who said, you know, what would you do if you were 10 times bolder? You know, so just keeping that in your mind and staying true to yourself. And if you feel it's important enough, you should speak up. It may have been easier because we were on the phone. I wasn't looking at faces. If I was looking at faces, I may have been a little bit, you know, less courageous in that moment, but it was important enough for me to take the risk.
I guess, oh, you go. No, go ahead. All I was going to say very quickly, and I agree with Serena, I think one nuance is that, you know, I think in those moments too, you kind of assess, is this something that I want to address in this very moment under these circumstances in this group? Or is this something that I want to address or need to address with the individual or a couple of individuals involved? Or is this even something that needs to be addressed in a different way beyond just talking about it in those circumstances? And so I think there is that mental analysis in that moment, as she was saying, in terms of what you want to say and how, but also figuring out what's the best way to address that issue. And sometimes it's more appropriate in public in that space. And sometimes it's very specific to an individual, and it's going to take a deeper conversation than just a person or a statement, and that it needs to be addressed beyond that as well. And sometimes you need to loop in a third person or somebody to say also, just so you know, beyond this unique situation or this conversation, this happened, and this is a bigger issue that needs to be addressed beyond that group or that situation.
I hope this is going to be helpful. I don't know. I'm a person that's not afraid of confrontation. I do better, opposite of Serena, I do better face-to-face than I do over the phone. And for me, there's power in that because there's not a lot of people that will do things confrontationally, or in confrontation, I don't mean like angrily, but just face-to-face. So in situations where things have been said or things that are a little off color, I'll use facial expressions, and I force myself to not be afraid of silence. So if something's said to me and it's a little off color, I'll pause for a while. And that my thought process is to put the uncomfortable nature back on the person that's making you uncomfortable. And that's my power. I switch it on them. I want to make you uncomfortable, and I'll just give an eye raise. I'm not as good as The Rock, kind of the eyebrow, whatever, but I'll just kind of give a little head tilt. So I'm talking to you this way. Somebody says something a little off color, and then my expression may change a little bit, and I'll tilt a little bit, and that triggers for me in their head. They get triggered with, oh, well, and then here comes the backtracking, right? And now they're going to start apologizing to me, and they're going to start telling me, oh, I didn't mean it that way, it's this and that. And now I'm in a better position to actually talk to that person about why I felt the way I felt. But I forced myself to be okay with face-to-face confrontation. If somebody's going to, if somebody is going to say something that can insult or hurt me, then I can say anything back that would do the same. And I'm not trying to go tit for tat or do anything like that. But if you don't know because of ignorance, not ignorant being a bad word, but just not knowing that that's troublesome, then I don't want the next person behind me to have to experience that. So I'm going to tell you about it, right? And I'm going to tell you in a nice way. If we're nice to each other. If you're not nice to me, I'm not going to tell you in a nice way. But I try to take the things that people have against me as a 6'1", 195-pound Black prosecutor, and I turn it on them. I close spaces. So if somebody's far away from me and they're making me feel uncomfortable, I'll do the head tilt, and then I'll take steps towards them. Now I'm in their space, and now they're uncomfortable. So now you're going to have to listen to me, and I take my power back. So I do little things like that, kind of nonverbal things. I don't, there's very rare occasion my voice goes up or down. I modulate my tone. I'll change expression, change cadence. And for me, those are the things that make somebody understand that what they just did was a little off color, a little wrong. And and like I said, that's why I said I don't know if that'll be helpful, because there was a retraining once I got into the private sector, in the public sector, to understand that I can speak up and there won't be any repercussions towards me for that. And so I do that. I do that now, and I'm not ashamed to do that if something comes forward. So that's kind of, I hope it's good advice in some kind of ways, but I feel like you should make yourself comfortable in uncomfortable situations and then turn it to make that person uncomfortable, because that's the biggest payback for me that I can have, because now you're scrambling and you're uncomfortable. So that's kind of my way to deal with it. And I will say, as a prosecutor, I've been called the defendant about 4 or 5 times in a suit, out of a suit, in Timberlands or whatever. I even had it happen by a judge, and a judge said, "You have to go stand over there." And I was like, "I don't. Just hold on a second." And she's like, "No, you go over there." And I'm like, "Wait 1 second. Albert Berry for the state of Illinois. And now who's uncomfortable? Is it me or is it the judge?" Because I just stood there, right? And now you have an uncomfortable judge. What is he going to do? You're going to hold me in contempt because you found me wrong? No, you're not. You're not going to do that. So that's why I say I take things and I turn it and I make the uncomfortable nature the other way. Because I'm not going to kowtow you. I'm not going to turn around and say, "Oh yes, judge, I do belong over there. Oh yes, judge. No. If you just give me a moment to explain to you." No, let's hold off. I'm comfortable with silence. So let's hold off. Let's wait till the real defendant gets in here. And I sat there in silence. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people, right? Because they're silent. You just sit there. "Could you go over that way?" 1 second, judge. You're starting to feel queasy and a little, "Oh man, this is uncomfortable." And that's how the judge started to feel. So that's for me, that's my power, and that's how I take it there. Sorry, I talked too much.
No, that's great and terrific advice. So does anybody else have anything to add? Okay, I see that we're running a little bit behind here, but this was incredible and so valuable. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so deeply appreciative of all of our panelists who have participated this evening, and all of our students who have come to hear their advice and words of wisdom. I hope we can do this again soon, because this was really a wonderful, informative panel. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everybody.
everyone. Take care.